that. All right. So, if you'd help me with the affirmation at the top of the page there. Together. In one spirit, we see God everywhere, in everyone and in everything. It's kind of a commitment, Ashley.
What's that?
What you just said.
Oh, I commit.
All right. So, hey, what's the good news?
Well, crickets.
It's gorgeous outside.
Beautiful
Feel
day.
real optimistic.
All right, yes, be optimistic. That was a little thing I sent out earlier.
Thinking
Birthdays?
about how observations don't have to be opinions.
Birthdays? Anniversaries?
Paris just turned 3.
Oh,
Happy birthday, Paris.
nice. Hirings? Firings?
I started my summer job last Friday, so my second job.
Willingly?
That's debatable.
I know, see, they talked you into it.
No, I work on a food truck in the summer.
Oh,
For
that's
my-
probably
yeah,
fun.
For my old restaurant.
All right, do we need to add anyone to the prayer list?
Melissa?
Mikhail's back in Guam.
You're already on it.
Okay. All right then.
Is Charlie on the list?
Yep. All right, well, let's get quiet. We'll do this meditation. Just relax right where you're at. Focusing on the breath. Not trying to change it in any way. Just noticing how it works. As you breathe in, you are filled. And as you breathe out, just naturally relax. Breathing in, you are filled with life. And breathing out, you relax into love. Say to yourself, I am joining. Just allow yourself to feel the connections. Just begin with those around you. You might visualize a thread of silver light going out from you to touch those around you. Grows wider, brighter, becoming a beam of holy light. That further connects us to those in the neighborhood, the community, the country, and the world. Those beams beams go forth from us to connect us with all life. We will it. We allow it because we know that alone we are powerless. And so, if ever, or should we ever today feel cut off from life, we just send forth those beams of light. Soon we realize that we are not just sending them forth, but they are being sent to us. We are in truth spiritually yoked to our fellows in all of our good endeavors. When we couple our efforts with our partners, we produce all of the desired outcomes. This is light. This is love. The love that glues us together. Just allow yourself to feel that comfort. We are connected. We are loving and we are loved. See, there's a place. There's a place where all things are fastened together. And that place is in your loving mind. And we say amen and amen. Yeah. So the sign gets people going. We have people who've never been here that comment about the sign, where they say something like, if I meet someone that hasn't been, that's that building that's painted like the Partridge Family bus, right? And then you got these signs outside that can never figure out what's going on. So it says one way, you're going one way, it says to win. And then everybody says, yes, that's what I want. And you look real quick and it says surrender. What? Surrender to win? This doesn't sound right somehow. Seems like they made a mistake up there. So yes, this is what we found. I hope this is all operating because the other one, Ustream, isn't. So let me just, now I'm off camera. They're going, what? Where do you go?
Craig,
Sorry,
it's on
it's
your
fine.
basket.
It's fine. Oh, sorry. Okay. So, little reference. So, surrender.
We do.
Yeah.
The surrender that I'm talking about, the surrender to win, is not, it's actually not like folding up like a wet tent. It's not just like this state of like total collapse. The surrender that I'm talking about is the surrender of the ego, the surrender of the self-centeredness. Actually, really, at the essence of it, it's the surrender of our aloneness. And it is the realization, as Jesus said, he said, when everyone was complimenting him, he said, of myself I do nothing. It's the Father within who doeth the work. And this is the kind of surrender we're talking about. So it's not the kind of surrender that says we don't have to do anything. It's a surrender that says we're going to get quiet, surrender ourselves into this loving presence, and allow that presence then to guide us in what we are to do. What's very interesting about this too is that it turns out that this goodwill that we're trying to align ourselves with, this state of desiring the best to come to everyone, it's not fixed. It's a dynamic thing. In the material world, it's dynamic. So it's this, we have this dichotomy that we're dealing with. We're like the ultimate entity, God, love itself, never changes. This realm of spirit never changes. But in the material world, everything is changing all of the time. And so we are presented with situation after situation on this journey back to this realm of spirit that is always just constant love. So in that journey, obviously, we have to take steps. We have to move down the spiritual path. We have to go from one perspective to another. And many times we decide for what some would call selfish reasons, but almost always the choices that we make are based on what we think is imperative. We believe it's imperative that we do. We're trying to protect ourselves. We could be trying to add things to our list of things that we all already have, and this seems very important. Recently, I've been adding things. Here I'm going off on a tangent again. I've been adding things. I noticed that my orders from Dusty Groove, the record store in Chicago, have been getting larger and larger, where the sales on the other end, the music that I'm selling, have not been getting larger and larger. So there's been then an accumulation of music that actually, when I look at it, there is no time to listen to. Now, this does not make any sense. But it happens all the time. We are continually gathering all sorts of things that, I mean, some of us are really, more sensible than others, but a lot of us are continually gathering things that we really don't need and perhaps don't even have the time to deal with. So anyway, I just noticed that this is what's happening, and I was thinking to myself, on the way, I wasn't thinking about it on the way into the record store yesterday, but I was thinking about it on the way out of the record store after I'd already accumulated a number of these things. And I was thinking, man, I got a whole bag full of these. They're not going to get listened to. And then there's another bag coming next week. Maybe I should examine this idea of surrender. Perhaps I might want to go into some kind of abstention. And that really so this surrender sets up this the idea of, okay, so what do I need to give up that is distracting me from the good that, well, let's say God has for me? This is really the main problem, is that we put all these other things, and the Course in Miracles calls them idols. That anything that we put in front of God, in priority, right, that would be considered an idol. We don't think about idols that way. We think back about the old 12 Commandments, 10 Commandments movie way back. What was it, right? They build this big golden statue, right? And but we're building these statues in our minds, is what's going on. So anyway, so this is always the thing that presents itself to us. See, right now there's not any pain in this for me. There's really not any pain in this music thing right at the moment. But there are a number of other situations in life where the same kind of situation leads to pain. And many of us have experienced it. That our out of control spending puts us in a really terrible place. Our out of control eating puts us in a very unhealthy and uncomfortable place. Our out of control sexual activity ends up being damaging the family and the entire community. We go, whoa, how did I get here? And it's time then to make a surrender. It's time to say, listen, let's figure out what we say, what's the biggest unresolved issue in our life? And anybody can do this today, because this is really what we're talking about. The biggest unresolved issue in your life, what is that? And from there decide, okay, so in this issue, what is it that I should abstain from? What do I need to set? In the 12-step programs, all of them have some pretty specific kind of things. In NA, it just says that we admit we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives become unmanageable. So we say, okay, well, here's what I need to abstain from, obviously, is mood and mind-altering substances. But if my particular problem is food, right now, temporarily, right? I got this temporary problem, which seems like it's going on forever, but I got this temporary problem. I can't stop eating. I don't just abstain from food. So I have to figure out, and generally speaking, I'm not real good at figuring it out on my own. Because I'm always justifying and rationalizing with these things that I make idols. So I need a little help. I need help from someone who maybe has gone through the same thing. And then of course, I need that help from the inside, from that presence of a loving God that resides in my heart. So I surrender to those things. I surrender what I think I want in favor of what I know is best for me and best for everyone else involved. So when we commit to this abstinence. So the underlying cause, we think about it though, all of it, no matter what your particular flavor of the day is, it all comes down to this one problem, which is defined in the book of Genesis, is when we ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In other words, our problem comes down to our problem comes down to us thinking it's us and them. Our problem comes down to us thinking we're separate from the rest of life. And then all these other mental gymnastics that we do extrapolate out of that and put us in so here's what happens. I think I'm apart from the rest of life. I'm alone. The rest of the world is conspiring against me, and so I begin to obsess about how do I escape from this position of loneliness, from this position of fear. How do I escape? And I seize on something. Maybe years ago it was drugs. Maybe it's a cheesecake. Maybe it's some records. Whatever it may be, this is my thought. I say, yes, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to feel better if I go get this other thing to drag inside of myself, and that's going to fill this hole. And I obsess and obsess, and I think, yes, this is. I may have all sorts of alternatives in my mind. They may just spin around. Then I choose one, and I step out, and then that's compulsion. Once I step out and actually act, then I many times set myself on a path that continues until the pain is so great that finally I come back and make this surrender. So we understand that it's the self-centeredness, and when I say self-centeredness, I don't just mean selfishness. That's too limited of a term. I mean that self-centeredness that tells us we're all alone and nobody else understands. That self-centeredness that says, man, you are at risk in a dangerous world. You better do some stuff to protect yourself right now. Continually, with every interaction that's happening around me. So we see that the answer to this self-centeredness is actually waking up to the fact that it's just not true. That we are not alone. We are not alone, and we can see it on every different level in the world. If we look in the world, we can see it on every different level. Because even though the world is designed to keep us self-centered, it still is built on this model of everything being connected. And we can see that everything is connected, and every action is connected to the next thing that happens. All of all of the forces that move through the world are each connected to the other, connected in time and connected in space. And so even the model that we use to keep us thinking that we are all alone shows us clearly that we're all in this together, whatever happens. And now it seems as if, it seems if we look at all of the evidence that it's actually getting worse for us. So that's even, more reason to have fear. But in the ideal, in spirit, we can feel it right now. We can feel that connection when we stop identifying with the body for a moment and just relax. As in the meditation, we could see the light connecting us one to another. And that sets up a sense of well-being. And this is waking up. This is actually the awakening from self-centeredness, is to visualize first and then feel those connections. So to get there, we might want to abstain from some things and put our attention on the practice. So I was thinking about taking a little Buddhist left turn here, and because they talk about abstinence in the Buddhist practice in very specific ways. There's five parts to abstinence, and they kind of apply to. I haven't found anything yet that it doesn't apply to. The first one is, I will undertake the training. This is how it starts. I will undertake the training rule. This is how it starts. I will undertake the training rule. So obviously, right in the beginning, it's talking about practice. It's not talking about you are going to do this perfectly. It's actually saying you're not attempting to do it perfectly. What you're doing is you are undertake the training rule to abstain from killing. This is the first one. I'm going to abstain from killing. Now this is common in all spiritual paths. This is very common. But when you start practicing, you realize it's not just talking about killing. That what we're saying here is I'm going to undertake the training rule to abstain from harm. I'm making a commitment. I'm saying right now, I want to stop hurting people. I want to stop hurting people. I want to stop hurting myself. And you can even take it further and you say, I want to stop hurting the environment. I want to stop hurting, animal. I mean, also anything that you believe that you've gotten out of whack. I want to stop causing harm. And then it becomes not just a negative I'm going to abstain from, it becomes this idea of I want to do something proactively good, not just abstain. So it would mean I want to contribute to the welfare of, not just abstain from harming, but I want to contribute to the welfare of this thing. And all these practices, all these Buddhist practices, they begin in the quietness. They begin in the meditation. To get them firmly fixed in our mind and making that commitment so that then when we go out into the world to interact with all of these seeming dangerous situations, that we come back. We have it fixed in our mind. We try to come back to this precept of this is how I'm trying to operate in my life. I'm trying to operate not just so that I won't be harmful, but so that I will be helpful. So the next one is I undertake the training rule to abstain from taking what is not given. Taking what is not given. And some people say, I'm not going to take what's not freely given. So now first of all, on the very surface of it, at the very top, it says I'm going to stop stealing, right? Again, another principle that you'll find in almost any spiritual path. I'm going to stop stealing, but it's also talking about, well, today, it's quite common. I will ask people in here, when was the last time you actually paid for music? I'm just saying, it's out there like it's right now. Some of it now is legitimate because the places where you look at it or listen to it are actually paying some kind of royalties. Many people watch every new movie that comes out and never pay for a single one. They hook up somewhere and get this new movie. This is actually theft. I know, that hurt my feelings when I realized that was theft. I said, that's probably not on the spiritual path, right? So this is what I tell them. We have musicians here. Every Friday night we have these musicians come in here from Chicago. And for years what I did to amass my music collection was I would get a copy and I would buy the original and I would make a copy. I would keep the copy and I would sell the original. That's okay, right? Turns out it's not. Turns out that's not correct. And why would I though? But why do I want to do that? Why would I want to even keep it? You know why? Because I want the display. It's like the peacock's feathers, right? I want the display of all of these 20,000 CDs that are back here in my office across the walls. It is a monumental display, right? It's all ego stuff. Probably the amount of music that I go through, I could listen to it one time and just go on to the next one. I don't need to put it on the shelf. Anyway, it's theft, right? So I tell the musicians, yeah, it is. When I make a copy, it is. And sell the original. So, but I tell the musicians when they come here, the reason that I support this music every Friday night is I'm making amends for all the theft through the years, right? So I want to abstain from that. And here's another thing about taking what's not freely given, taking credit. See this happen all the time. Somebody will have a good idea, and then we will take it as our own and act like we thought it up. I know, not you guys. So the next one is, I will undertake the training rule to avoid sexual misconduct. This sexual misconduct, this is a tricky one. Depends on where you live, who you live with, what the ideas are, what the commitments are, what works in the community, what works in the family. I mean, there's all sorts of different things. But it is clear that if I know in myself what it is, then I'm supposed to abstain, right? It could be different. It could be different if I'm in a different culture. But why do we abstain? We abstain because it causes harm. So, now this is a hard one, like I say, because I'm not going to tell you what it is. You got to figure that out based on your own values, what your own thing is, right? And then, even then, you can fool yourself. And so the second question would come in, is anyone harmed through my behavior? The fourth one is to undertake the training rule to abstain from false speech. False speech. So I'm going to abstain from lying. This is right on the surface, right? I'm going to abstain from lying. But the monks are much stricter than this. They say, not only we're going to abstain from lying, we're going to abstain from gossip. We're going to abstain, and this is what my teacher, he said, I decided that my abstinence, my precept, I was going to practice it for this next 6 months, was I was not going to talk about another person who was not present, even if I was about to say something good. I was just not going to talk about them at all if they weren't present. And he said that my conversation was cut down 90%. So it's just about being aware of what we're saying. And then the next part of this it's called skillful speech, right? So then you have to ask yourself, when I'm about to open my mouth, first thing, is it true? What I'm about to say, is it true? And then the second thing, this is what he told me, and I needed to be told. He said, the second thing is it kind? And I said, well, wait a minute, sometimes you need to say something might not be kind, but you're just putting it out there because, people need to know, right? And he said, I'll guarantee you that there is nothing that you need to say that you can't figure out a way to say it with kindness. And he said, that's why we call it skillful speech. You're trying to get better at it. So many times I can justify yelling at somebody. Probably today sometime I'll do it. I will yell at somebody and I justify it by saying I'm in the right. This is always a problem. It's always a problem to be right. So, but not skillful then. So, the next question to ask is it necessary? This opens up a whole can of worms. So what I'm about to say right now, is it necessary? Or could I just be, boy, this just cuts out like almost all my conversation. Many times, just think about it, many times we don't have to say anything. How many times have we found ourselves just prattling on, and then we go, oh, wait a minute. And other people are, many of them are being kind, and they're just listening. I have to ask myself the question, why am I doing this? The fifth one is I will undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicating drinks and drugs which lead to carelessness. Sometimes it just says, I will abstain from intoxicants, but this has grown to include, well, of course it's obvious, right? And many practices in Buddhism now, what they don't even tell their practitioners, we're not saying that you can't take drugs or you can't drink alcohol. What we're saying is if you take it to the point of intoxication that interferes with your mindfulness, then you are outside of the parameter. So for me, I know what that means is don't take the first one. This is what I know, just don't take the first one. But I also know many other people who they have no problem. But you know, sometimes you see that they had a problem, at least that night, right? That one night. So, but then it also starts to include, and you start thinking about taking poison, right? Don't put poison in the body. So this would be refrain from eating things that aren't good for us, right? And then it might also mean poisons to the mind. It might also mean that I stop watching television that causes upset in me. It could be the news, right? Oh, I talk about the news too much because you don't know. If you come in here during the week, I'll be sitting there, MSNBC is on the news, and I'm railing at all of the crazy things that are going on. And I am. This is the bad part about it, is I'm aware that I'm off track, but somehow I'm kind of stuck on it right now. Anyway, I think it's going to get better. This is my optimism, and I'll continue to report back, on whether it does or not. But then there could be all sorts of things that we are taking into our minds that really are not helpful.
Could it be behavior that's intoxicating?
Well, yeah, I'm sure that it can be. In this regard, though, as far as this taking in these, yes, because you get these payoffs happen. These payoffs happen hormonally, and these chemicals start operating in the brain out of doing certain things. But I'm also thinking about, I might have a friend who has some opinions that they keep giving me their opinions over and over again, and these opinions have a bad effect in my mind, right? The opinions might be having a bad effect in my mind where I'm try to align my belief system with theirs because I need their approval. This is no good. Or it could be operating in my mind where I'm totally disagreeing with them and want to go crazy and start throttling them right there on the spot, right? So now listen, I know none of you guys think this way. I know that it's just me. It's just me. So
Watching news.
So that's right. So watching the news and yelling. Now this is what's crazy, and I said this before, but I'm watching the news and I got it on delay because I want to skip. I turn it on and I go away for a while, and then I come back and I back it up, right? And so I can skip through the commercials. So I'm yelling at the TV, and I did the same thing with sports, right? I'm yelling at the TV, thinking that my yelling at the TV is going to change the outcome of what's coming through the TV. Well, first of all, I know minds are joined, so they probably should be getting it, but anyway, if you're yelling at the TV, it's unlikely that the people on the other end of the TV are going to hear it. It's unlikely. They may hear it at some level of consciousness, but it's surely not going to happen if it's on record and you are yelling at the TV about something that happened a half hour ago. They're probably definitely not going to hear you railing them. So all of this stuff, and the reason for thinking about this poison of the mind is to say that if I'm on this path, if I'm on this spiritual path, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to move in consciousness from the point I'm at now, where I sometimes think I still sometimes think I'm alone. Well, way back here on the path, I was thinking I was alone all the time. Well, I moved down the path a little ways, so I'm at a place now where only sometimes I think I'm alone. Why would I want to take something into my body or into my consciousness that continues to reinforce the old idea that I'm alone? And that's what, I'm sorry, but that's what the news does for me, right? It reinforces the idea that I'm alone. And so maybe I need to abstain from the news. Now, Again, my teacher goes on retreats. Sometimes they've actually had 6-month retreats. We go on 6-month retreat and silent. You're silent all day long. The only time you talk is in the meeting at the end of the day. Not even at meals. No conversation. At the end of the day, you have discussion. You have Dharma discussions, right? So think about that for 6 months. And then he says, so for 6 months, I don't see the news. I don't see any of it for 6 months. And he said, then when I'm done with my retreat after 6 months, I go home and turn on the news. It's the same news. Nothing's changed in 6 months. Some things have developed along the line, but he said, generally speaking, it's all the same. The news is still the same. He said, so really, I probably don't need to watch it at all because it's not changing. It just keeps spinning. Seems like different circumstances, but the same things just keep happening over and over again. Well, this is very instructive. This is what the Course says about it anyway. So it just seems like new things are happening, but they're not. It's just loops. They're just loops. So, all right. So we abstain from these things. Seems like a lot of stuff to abstain from when you think about all these 5 things that it says. But look, it's a path. It's a discipline. It's what we're moving. We're moving in a direction. And so we do, and this is why the Buddhists say, we're undertaking it. We're undertaking a training role. So we don't have to be perfect. And worrying about being perfect is just another distraction. It's just another idol that we're putting in front of God. So it seems like a lot. And maybe we think we don't have a problem with one thing or another that may have been discussed today. But in that case, we should just pay close attention to the ongoing effects. And also remember that these abstentions, these things that we're surrendering, these things that we say, okay, it's enough of that, it's causing harm, these things are really just voluntary. Nobody's making us do it. It's voluntary. And we renew them on a daily basis. That's enough. Thanks.